Imagine this. You just retired, you've got $300,000 in your 401k. You worked 30 years for it, and you feel pretty good about where you are. Then you sit down with a financial advisor, and she looks at your account history. She gets quiet for a second. Then she says, "Did you know you've been leaving your employer's match on the table since 2014? You didn't know? Nobody told you." And the number she writes on the notepad is $18,000. That was your money. It was part of your compensation. You just never claimed it. Today, I want to walk you through the 7 things that Fidelity's retirement research shows retirees wish they had done differently. Some of you watching right now are making these exact same mistakes, and there is still time to fix every single one of them. And if this kind of information helps you, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now, because we put out videos like this every single week. Here's what I promise you: by the end of this video, you're going to know all 7 of the most common 401k regrets. With real dollar figures attached to each one, you'll know which ones might apply to your situation right now. And for every single regret, I'm going to give you one concrete thing you can actually do about it. Something you could start this week. Every number I share today comes from Fidelity's own research, Vanguard's How America Saves report, or verified IRS rules. No invented figures, no guessing. Let's get into it. The data I'm drawing from today comes from 3 major sources: Fidelity's 2025 State of Retirement Planning Study, Vanguard's 2025 How America Saves report, which covers nearly 5 million real retirement plan participants, and peer-reviewed research published in the National Tax Journal, tracking more than 800 retirement plans over 5 years. These aren't opinions. These are the numbers that come from people who actually did this and either got it right or wish they had. Let me start with the one that makes me the most frustrated on behalf of working people, because this one is completely avoidable. 1 in 4 workers, that's 25%, does not contribute enough to their 401k to get their full employer match. Now let me explain what that means in plain language, because this matters more than almost anything else I'll say today. Think of your employer match like a bonus that's already been promised to you. It's sitting in a locked box. Your employer says, "We will match what you put in up to a certain amount." The most common formula at Fidelity administered plans is this: they match you dollar for dollar on the first 3% you contribute, and 50 cents on the next 2%. So to get every dollar of that match, you need to be contributing 5% of your paycheck. Not 3, 5. Here's the problem. A lot of people were auto-enrolled at 3% when they started their job. They were handed a stack of paperwork. On their first week, they checked a box, and they never thought about it again. And every year since then, they've been leaving 2% of their salary in free money on the table. According to Financial Engine's research covering more than 4 million retirement plan participants, the typical employee who misses the full match leaves $1,336 per year behind. That doesn't sound catastrophic. But at a hypothetical 7% annual growth rate over 20 years, that one gap, that one unchecked box, could cost you more than $42,000 by the time you retire. And Americans collectively leave $24 billion in unclaimed employer matches on the table every single year. Every year. This is not a market timing problem. This is not a stock picking problem. It's a paperwork problem. Your employer already agreed to give you this money. You just have to go claim it. So here's what you do this week. Log into your 401k account or walk over to HR and ask one simple question. What is our match formula? And am I contributing enough to get the full match? That's it. If you're not the right contribution level, increase it by even 1%. 1%, your future self will thank you. Now, that's regret number 1. And I want you to stay with me, because regret number 2 involves something that a lot of people think is a smart move when money gets tight. It is not. At some point, Most of us face a moment when money is tight and we look around for options. The roof needs replacing, there's a medical bill, a layoff happens out of nowhere, and someone, maybe a friend or a coworker, says, you can borrow from your 401k. You pay yourself back with interest. That sounds reasonable. That sounds almost smart. But here's what nobody tells you about that move. According to a study published in the National Tax Journal, tracking more than 800 retirement plans over 5 years, 86% of workers who leave a job with an outstanding 401k loan default on the balance, not some, not most, 86%. And the reason is simple. When you leave your employer, that loan becomes due in full by your next tax filing deadline. Most people don't have $10,000 or $12,000 sitting around to pay it back on short notice. So the IRS treats the unpaid balance as a taxable distribution. You owe income taxes on the full amount. If you're under 59 and a half, you also pay the 10% early withdrawal penalty, and your employer already withheld 20% at the time of the original loan. So you've already lost money before you even started repaying. But here's the part that almost nobody talks about. Even if you do repay the loan perfectly, right on schedule, you're still paying it back with after-tax dollars. And when you retire and withdraw that same money from your 401k, it gets taxed again as ordinary income. The same money gets taxed twice. Once when you pay the loan back, once when you take it out in retirement. Meanwhile, while that money is sitting outside the market as a loan, it's not growing. If you borrow $10,000 at age 50 and the market grows at 7%, hypothetically, you could lose more than $20,000 in potential growth over 15 years just from that one loan. According to a human interest survey, 48% of full-time workers who took a 401k loan later said they regretted it. Now, I understand that emergencies happen. Starting in 2024, Secure 2.0 did create a provision that allows up to $1,000 per year in emergency withdrawals without the 10% penalty. That's a narrow exception. For anything larger, do everything else first. Personal loan, home equity. Credit union, a 401k loan is not a financial lifeline. It's a trap that springs when your job situation changes. Stay with me, because regret number 3 is one that surprises people. It sounds like being responsible, but it quietly cost a lot of retirees a fortune. When you're handed your 401k enrollment form on your first day of work, someone usually checks a box for you, a default investment option. And in a lot of plans, that default is something called a stable value fund or a money market. Fund something that feels safe, something that doesn't go up or down much. And a lot of people, because life gets busy, never change it. Here's the problem. Safe in the short term can mean losing ground in the long term. Inflation is real. If your money grows at 2% a year, but the cost of groceries, utilities, and healthcare grows at 3 or 4% a year, you are falling behind. You are losing purchasing power while feeling like you're being cautious. Fidelity has been direct about this in their research. Leaving money in cash or investing too conservatively when you have time on your side to recover from market downturns could hinder growth. And here is the piece of this that catches people off guard. A 65-year-old today may realistically live to 85, 90, or beyond. That's a 20 to 30-year investment horizon. That's time. More time than a lot of people give themselves credit for. Now, I'm not saying to put everything in the stock market the week before you retire. That would be a different mistake. What I'm saying is that if you set your investment allocation at enrollment in 1998 or 2004 and you've never looked at it since, it may not reflect where you are or where you need to go. A target date fund pegged to your expected retirement year does that rebalancing automatically over time. It's worth at least looking at what you're in. Bankrate put it plainly in 2025. Many workers remain stuck in conservative investments that don't keep up with inflation. So here's your action step. Log into your account and look at your investment options. If you see all your money in a money market or stable value fund, call your plan administrator and ask about your target date fund options. That's one phone call. You don't have to make any changes that day. Just get informed. All right, here comes number 4. And this one happens at the exact moment most people are the most distracted. When you leave a job, you have a lot on your mind. New role, new commute, new insurance paperwork. And somewhere in that stack of documents from your old employer is a question about your 401k. What do you want to do with it? And a lot of people, especially when the balance is smaller, look at that question and think, it's only $12,000. I'll just take it. That is the most expensive small decision a lot of people ever make. Here's what happens when you cash out a 401k at a job change. Your former employer immediately withholds 20% for taxes. Then at tax time, you owe income taxes on the full amount at your bracket. And if you're under 59.5, add the 10% early withdrawal penalty on top of that. A $12,000 account could net you $7,000 or less after all of that. You've handed the government nearly half of what you worked years to save, but here's the real cost. And this is the number that should stop you cold. Research published in the National Tax Journal estimates that premature withdrawals eat up somewhere between 30 and 45% of all the money going into retirement accounts each year. That $12,000 you cashed out at 43 could have been $80,000 or more by the time you retired, at a hypothetical 7% growth rate. That's not a rounding error. That's a life-changing amount of money. The good news is that the rules have improved. Under Secure 2.0, for smaller accounts under $7,000, something called auto portability has been put in place to roll your old 401k directly into a new employer's plan automatically. Fidelity has been working to accelerate adoption of this system precisely because of how many people were losing savings at job transitions. Your options when you leave a job are roll it to your new employer's plan, roll it to an IRA, or leave it with the old employer temporarily while you figure it out. Cashing out is never the right choice. Now, speaking of leaving money on the table, regret number 5 is one where the IRS actually hands you a gift, and only 16% of eligible people bother to pick it up. If you are 50 or older and still working, the IRS gives you permission to save more than the standard annual limit inside your 401k. It's called the catch-up contribution for 2025 if you're 50 or older. Your standard contribution limit is $23,500. The catch-up adds $7,500 more. For a total of $31,000, you can shelter from taxes in a single year. And if you happen to be between the ages of 60 and 63 right now, there is an even larger provision. Under Secure 2.0, this group gets what's being called a super catch-up. Instead of $7,500 extra, you can contribute $11,250 extra. That brings your total for 2025 to $34,750. For 2026, it goes up to $35,750. Now, here's what Vanguard found in their 2025 How America Saves report. Covering nearly 5 million plan participants, only 16% of workers who were eligible for the standard catch-up contribution actually used it in 2024. 16%. That means 84% of people who had permission to sock away an extra $7,500 in a tax-sheltered account simply did not. The super catch-up is even newer and even less well-known. Most people in that 60 to 63 window have no idea they're sitting on a provision worth thousands of dollars a year in additional tax-sheltered savings. Here's why this window matters so much. It closes when you turn 64. You cannot go back. You cannot double up later, and at a hypothetical 7% annual return over 3 years. Maxing out the super catch-up instead of the standard catch-up could mean an extra $13,000 or more in your account by the time you hit retirement. Tax sheltered. There is one important update for 2026 that high earners need to know. If you earned $150,000 or more in FICA wages in 2025, your catch-up contributions in 2026 will be required to go into a Roth 401k, not a traditional pre-tax account. Your plan has to offer a Roth option for that to work. If it doesn't, talk to HR now before 2026 arrives. Your action step. Call HR or your plan administrator this week and ask 2 things. Does our plan offer the super catch-up for ages 60 to 63? And am I currently maximizing it? That's the whole call. Now we're coming to the one that hits hardest for people already in retirement. Regret number 6 involves a rule that has a deadline and a penalty that shows up without warning. If you have a traditional 401k or traditional IRA, the government has been patient with you for decades. They let that money grow without taxing it year after year. But at age 73, they come to collect. And if you're not ready, the cost is significant. Here's how it works in plain language. The IRS requires you to start withdrawing a minimum amount from your traditional retirement accounts every year beginning at age 73. They call this the required minimum distribution, or RMD. They calculate it based on your account balance in a life expectancy table they publish. As an example, a $100,000 IRA at age 73 produces an RMD of about $3,773 for the year. You have to take that out, and you have to pay ordinary income taxes on it. Miss it. The penalty is 25% of the amount you should have withdrawn. On a $500,000 account, a missed RMD of roughly $18,868 would produce a penalty of nearly $4,700, and that's just the penalty. The taxes still apply on top of it. Now here's the trap that catches people who think they're being careful. The IRS gives you until April 1st of the year after you turn 73 to take your very first RMD. That sounds like a grace period, but what they don't advertise is that your second RMD is still due December 31st of that same year. So if you delay your first one to April, you're taking 2 full RMDs in 1 calendar year. 2 taxable withdrawals that can push your income into a higher bracket. And if your combined income crosses certain thresholds, it can trigger what's called RMAA, which are Medicare surcharges that arrive 2 years later and cost hundreds of dollars a month in extra premiums. For many retirees, the cleaner move is to take the first RMD in the calendar year you actually turn 73, not delay it to the following April. Talk to a tax professional about your specific situation. One more thing. If you have multiple 401k accounts from different employers, you have to calculate and take the RMD from each one separately. Unlike IRAs, you cannot aggregate 401k RMDs and take them all from one account. Each plan stands on its own. The good news? Most major custodians, Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, will set up automatic RMD distributions for you if you call them before your 73rd birthday. You don't have to track this manually, just call and set it up. Now, here we go. Regret number 7 is the one I want you to pay extra attention to, because most people only discover it after the window has already closed. For most of your working life, you were told to put money into a traditional 401k or traditional IRA pre-tax. Reduce your taxable income, now let it grow, pay taxes later. That made sense. It probably was the right move while you were in your peak earning years. But here's the part of the story nobody finishes telling you. Every single dollar sitting in a traditional 401k or IRA is owed to the IRS. When you take it out, every dollar is taxed as ordinary income. And starting at age 73, The government forces you to take it out whether you need the money or not. Those forced withdrawals added to Social Security can push some retirees into higher tax brackets. And, as we just talked about, they can trigger Medicare surcharges they never saw coming. Now here is the counterintuitive part. Most retirees have a window, a stretch of years where their taxable income is unusually low, probably the lowest it's been since their 20s. The years after you stop working, but before Social Security and RMDs kick in. If you retire at 62 or 63 and you don't start Social Security until 67 or 70, and your RMDs don't begin until 73, you have a gap of several years where your income is relatively modest. That is the ideal window to convert money from a traditional account to a Roth. A Roth conversion means you pay the income taxes on a portion of your traditional account now at a lower rate and move it into a Roth account where it grows tax-free and is never subject to RMDs. You're essentially choosing to pay the tax bill on your own terms at a lower rate instead of letting the IRS dictate it to you at age 73 or 80. Here's how the math could look in a hypothetical example. Assume you convert $200,000 from a traditional IRA to a Roth during your low-income years at a 22% effective tax rate. You pay roughly $44,000 in taxes now. That $200,000, growing at a hypothetical 6% annually for 15 years, becomes approximately $479,000. All of that is tax-free at withdrawal. No RMDs, no income tax. If you left it in the traditional account, every dollar of that $479,000 would be taxed as ordinary income, potentially at higher rates because your RMDs may have grown your taxable income by then. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results, and individual results will vary, but the structural advantage is real. There's also something called the widow's penalty that I want to mention briefly because it catches a lot of surviving spouses off guard. When one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse shifts from married filing jointly to single filing status. That means their tax brackets are cut nearly in half. Suddenly, the same amount of RMD income that was manageable for a married couple is pushing a widower into a much higher bracket. Roth assets have no RMDs and don't create that kind of taxable income that matters enormously to surviving spouses. The window for this strategy is not permanent. Every year, you don't do at least some planning around Roth conversions, is a year closer to when the RMDs begin and the window narrows. A conversation with a CPA or a qualified financial planner about your specific tax situation could be worth thousands of dollars over your retirement. Now, here's what almost nobody tells you. And this is the part I want you to remember when this video is over. The reason most people make these mistakes is not that they're careless or irresponsible. It's that the 401k system was built to be set it and forget it. The auto-enrollment rates are set low. The default investments are often conservative. The system never pops up a reminder that says, hey, you're leaving your match on the table. It never tells you, hey, the super catch-up window opens for you next year. It never sends an alert that says, your gap years for Roth conversions started last month. The system works just fine for the people administering it. For you, it requires one thing, attention. And that's exactly what you're giving it right now by being here. Your 401k is the most powerful financial tool most Americans have. But the research shows that most people make at least one costly mistake with it that they only recognize in hindsight when the money is already gone. You still have time to make sure that isn't you. Let me give you 5 things you can do starting this week. First, log into your 401k account or talk to HR and ask one question. Am I contributing enough to get my full employer match? If not, increase your contribution by even 1% this week. Second, if you are between ages 60 and 63, ask HR whether your plan offers the Secure 2.0 Super Catch-Up contribution. It could allow you to shelter an extra $11, $250 a year from taxes. That window closes when you turn 64, and it cannot be recovered. Third, if you have a 401k loan outstanding and you're thinking about changing jobs, pause and talk to a financial advisor before you make the move. Understand what the balance is, what the deadline is, and what it would cost you if you couldn't repay it. Fourth, if you are approaching 73, call your custodian, whether that's Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, or whoever holds your account, and ask them to set up automatic RMD distributions before your birthday. Do not rely on memory for a rule with a 25% penalty attached. Fifth, if you've retired in the last few years or you're planning to retire soon, put a meeting on the calendar with a CPA or financial planner to talk about Roth conversions. One conversation. That's it. Find out whether the gap year window applies to you and whether there's a conversion that makes sense to your bracket. Small steps, real money, that's all this is. If you've made it this far, I want to ask you something. Did any of these 7 regrets hit close to home? If this video made you think, made you check something, or made you want to make one phone call this week, I'd love to know about it in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it now. We put out a new video every week on exactly these kinds of retirement money questions. In plain language, no jargon, no agenda, just the stuff you actually need to know. Here's the thing I want to leave you with. Fidelity's own research shows that 72% of retirees say retirement is going as planned, and 69% say it's actually more enjoyable than they expected. So the story doesn't have to be one of regret. Most people, when they pay attention and make even small adjustments, end up in a much better place than they feared. None of these mistakes happen because people are foolish. They happen because the rules are complicated. They keep changing, and nobody sits you down and explains them on your first day of work. That's what this channel is here for. You're not behind. You're not too late. You're paying attention right now, and that is exactly how people get this right. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I'll see you in the next one, for educational purposes only, not financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a qualified professional before making any decisions about your retirement accounts.